me and me, Ellen, and we're going to be talking today about podcasting, but specifically about storytelling in podcasting, because it really is so important. At least I think so. And I like storytelling anyway. But Victoria is a real podcast expert, and she'll get you on podcasts and help you with your podcast and all of this stuff. So do look her up because she's really helped me. And so, Victoria, why do you see it being really useful for people to tell stories?
I think firstly, we remember stories more than we remember facts and figures. So when you tell stories, when you're on something like a podcast, it can really help build that connection and also that relatability with the audience. And you only have to think yourself. I think stories capture your attention, don't they? So
Oh,
they're
yeah.
really, really important.
I think so too. And I always remember, even if somebody's teaching me to do something, if I'm reading it like a story or in a story, even, I remember how to do it. And if somebody gives me a textbook, it all goes bzz.
Yeah, completely. I think it's just the way our brains work.
I think it is for a lot of people. It's not quite for all, because my husband is one of those people who enjoys reading manuals at any particular time of day. I open a box with something new in it, and it's got a manual in it. He's, "Ah."
Yeah, I mean, I do. I have a son who's more interested in reading encyclopedias than, than a novel. So yes, you're right. It's not everybody, but okay, in general.
I think so. And I think if you're listening to something like a lot of people do, like on the train or commuting or in your car or whatever. I mean, even got a friend who she puts her podcasts on when she's vacuuming or something like that. I mean, it's the sort of thing we all do. And it's sort of, I find it's nicer if there's a story and I can actually relate to somebody with
Mhm.
it. And it makes it a sort of big difference to me. But we put together a few slides just to remind you of this. Oh, and at the end, for those of you sign up, those of you put a comment in or like or something, we've got a PDF of 5 tips. Actually, it's 10 tips, isn't it, Victoria?
It's 5 tips from each of us.
That's right. So you're getting an angle, a slightly different angle on each tip each time.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll come over a bit like a story. But it's it really is quite a thing. So we thought if we can, now this is where you're going to have to bear with me a little bit, because me and connecting PowerPoint, shut up, Victoria, stop giggling at me.
Sorry.
Laughing at me. I've messed with it. Me and connecting PowerPoint and making it run is interesting, isn't it? I think that's probably the politest way of putting it. So
Well,
anyway, I'm going to have a go at that. So let's see what we can do. We share screen. Can do that bit. Now let's see if we can find the right window. Yeah, we got the right window. And now what happens, and anybody can talk to me later, is that I get blasted with a whole screen full of the slides. And I think actually, do you know what, Victoria? I think I've got it.
you got it? Yay.
Don't breathe,
Well
don't
done.
breathe, don't breathe. I think we might be there. So, how storytelling can bring your podcast to life with Ellen Sensier and Victoria Benyon. We've got our details later on, so you're okay for that. So, we've said a little bit about how they can bring it to life, but how do you feel that it really brings things to life, Victoria?
I can think about the podcasts sometimes that I listen to for clients, and it's it's those conversations where the guest is telling a story that you remember forever. Like we have, for example, a client in the health space, and I was listening to one of his podcast interviews, and he shares this story about how a woman came to him with hives, and he talks about how she was really suffering. She tried loads of medication, and the only like joy she'd got from the medication was the side effects. And she'd been to doctors, and she thought he was kind of a last resort. And he then talks about what he did, what he took her through to find what was causing the hives, to fix the hives, and then how that actually turned into him deciding that he was going to be the last person that anyone ever needed to see. And it was part of his origin story of forming the business.
Wow.
And you can picture the women with the hives, the way he tells it, and everything. So it's so much more powerful than just sharing the facts. I started my business in 2010 or whatever. But stories are just powerful. I think they make an impression on us. And as you were saying, they can help you really relate to somebody, to know if maybe you're the person that they want to work with or not. It can be both ways. I think it's polarizing maybe, but it's showing that part of you.
Yeah, I think that's important too, that polarization thing. So let's see if I can move this on a little bit. Oh, look at that.
Yay!
Come on, I want a round of applause, everybody. I actually moved this thing without falling apart. No, back to this. I think that palpability is really important. And at first sight, you sort of think, oh, woman with hives. Story? Really? Wouldn't you? And yet, you've just given us the brief overview of it. And yes, and I love the fact that the only thing she enjoyed was the side effects. But even at that, it's that little quirky thing that is, oh, that's interesting. Nobody's ever said that to me before. And I think it sort of gives you little hooks to things. I've had stories, well, I get stories all the time with clients, as I think you probably do, probably most of us do, particularly those of us who are coaches or teachers or anything like that. And stories can be very, very much involving. And this one helped me, but I think it also helped the client to know that she could work with me. And it was quite a deep thing. She'd always been the underdog. She'd always been the Cinderella in her family. Everybody else was brilliant. Everybody else was earning billions of pounds. And, her mum and dad were absolutely fine and all this sort of thing. And every time she touched something, it fell apart. It'd start off well and then fall apart. And it was a real Cinderella story because she hadn't got any confidence. Every time she tried to do something, she was completely stuffed with imposter syndrome. And she was actually very good at quite a lot of things, which was important, but she couldn't see it. And so she was telling me about herself, and I was listening, and I was really involved in the story because I could feel it. And when you really get it, you get a feel that I've been in something like that, as she's not alone. And you can come back to, you're not alone there. It's okay. My experience wasn't yours, but I've had something similar. And when this happens, I felt, yes, I could help you. I can be useful for you. I can serve you. And she actually felt, yes, I think Ellen's going to be okay. I think I'm going to be safe with Ellen. She's going to listen to me. And as she said to me, she's just finished working with me. And she said, I'll have to come back. I can't come back at the moment. I'll have to come back because I really feel you understand me. Mm-hmm. And it's because of this sharing of stories that enabled that to happen. So I think sharing them on podcasts, it shows a lot, doesn't it?
It does.
And well,
absolutely.
It's really quite important. Let's move it on a bit. We'll go see where we go. So yeah, so we both shared sort of one kind of story, which is very personal. But what other kinds of stories can we have? I mean, you mentioned one that I was thinking of just now, but you go for it first, Victoria.
So I mentioned the origin story. think that's a really good one to work on, how your business came into existence. You know, a story that illustrates the challenges, maybe what inspired you to start the business, your personal experiences, you know, everything that led to creating it. That story is a pretty important one, I think, to have up your sleeve. But other stories I would suggest coming up with are something that demonstrates, you know, problems that your business aims to solve. You could talk through examples of clients or customers facing challenges and how your product or service provided a solution, but wrapped up in a story. Kind of like the lady with the hives. I guess that's more than one. That was definitely a problem solving as well.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. And also pivotal moments about your journey, your turning points, challenges that you overcame. I mean, maybe that's, I don't know the stories that you shared with the client you're talking about, but I think those kind of stories can definitely help generate that connection. You know, very relatable, or moments that you it led you to a breakthrough or significant growth, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is quite often with clients that sort of thing, because they've been pivotal. I think there are pivotal moments in all of our lives. And I think one of the problems with an origin story, and yes, I think you need to know your origin story for your business, let alone telling it on your podcast. Otherwise, you don't really know who you are and therefore who you can serve. But we've all had lots or several pivotal points in our lives. I mean, there are two or three that I've had, and somebody sort of said to me, "Well, what set you off like on LinkedIn?" And it's a really weird one because it was actually losing my home in Hereford and having to move, which is a sort of, you know, losing your home, moving is one of the biggest stress points in anybody's life. And that actually moved me into looking and doing business with lots more different people, a much wider audience of people. And sharing things like that can be really useful for people because they don't see their own pivot points quite often. Do you find that, Victoria?
Yes, yeah. When we start working with clients, that's something that we try to dive into with them at the bottom, like the bottom at the beginning, trying to work out, yeah, key points, pivotal moments. For some people, it's clearer than others. One of our clients who's a coach, she talks about her mother dying being a massive wake-up call for her, and it led her to go traveling. She worked in corporate roles, led her to go traveling, and it was while she was in Australia that she just felt her calling was to be in a completely different direction, helping other people with their careers. And then that was one pivotal moment, but then that led to quite a massive changes in her life. So I think it's important, yeah, to be aware of those so you can share them.
Yeah, I think so too. And you said earlier about it, your story can repel people, excuse me, as well as attract them. And I think it's something that's very important. I find it with my own clients. We're each not for everybody.
Yeah.
You trying to be something for, you know, the right thing for everybody you just end up being very bland, and you're not actually being yourself, and you're not actually being much use to people. So I find sometimes people are frightened to tell their story because either it brings up a lot for them, which is good, but well, nobody will want to hear about that, will they? Or that's too much. No, I can't tell people about that. That's too big. And both of those ends of nobody will want to hear about that and this is too big, they're probably the things people really do want to hear about.
Yes. And I think it's those details that you share. Obviously, you don't have to share everything, but those details you share, like for example, I know that you love cats, and that's in your branding, and your love of cats is something you talk about. So if you're chatting away and someone is fully a dog person, really doesn't like cats, Ellen might not be the person for you, but then you attract all these people who do, who love cats. Right, that's just an example. But it's for those reasons sometimes we find when we talk to our clients that they've shared some details on a podcast, and when someone has then reached out to them because they want to work with them or connect with them, it will be one of those details that they shared that they chose that person over someone else who seems on paper to do the same thing. It's those differentiating things.
It is. I must say, before Victoria gets carried away on this one, I don't only treat people, I don't only work with people who like cats.
No, sorry, that wasn't maybe the best example.
As well, I'm fine with those too. But I think we've all got our own sort of personal passions. One of my others is gardening, and it is amazing. I don't share very much about the garden, although somebody was poking me that I should the other day. But it's funny, quite a lot of my clients I find are gardeners too, although they didn't know that much about me to start with, and I didn't about them. So I think all of this bringing out of you through the story and you working with other people in your stories, I think that really makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you can also use stories to illustrate your values or the mission of your business. That can also be really useful if you think through some personal anecdotes to share that tie back to your business's core message or philosophy, lesson you learned, a mistake you made, moment of clarity that shaped your approach to your business. They're useful stories, I think.
I think they are too. So where do we go from here? Well, we're sort of into it a bit because yes, all of this will boost your business because people getting to know you, and there will be people who just like listening to your podcast, and that's absolutely fine. But there will be also people who listen to it and they think, actually, those problems and things that Ellen's been talking about or Victoria's been talking about the past sort of weeks when I've been listening, actually that is ringing a bell for me and making a bit of a difference. So, maybe I should talk more. I've been wanting to start a podcast for ages. This actually happened, didn't it, with me? Because I've been wanting to start a podcast. And, I've been sort of, how do I do this? And I've had a few goes on my own. And then, as usual, as a lurker, listening to your podcasts, Victoria, and going, watching them and looking at other people's. And I thought, right, yeah, let's get a call with this woman. I think this is going to be okay. And it's that kind of thing that people will lurk on your podcasts, listening, happy, being one of your followers and that. And then they will find, yes, I need that.
Yeah, I think, and storytelling in that way, it will boost your business because it will help you to really engage with your audience, as you're saying, and it will help differentiate you from others, and it will really help you to build those lasting connections with potential clients.
Yeah, it does. I think that maybe it'd be good to sort of slightly pivot, as we've been talking about. And what are the components of a good story?
Yeah, how do you put one together?
Yeah, because everybody sort of sits there going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And yet, they all are, sort of 4 or 5 of you hanging out in the cafe, having coffee. And what are you doing? You will be telling each other little stories about you, your day, your kids, your garden, your friends, whatever else has turned you on at the time. And you'll be doing it on autopilot. But what makes it, when we have to clunk our heads together and build it for that, what for you what's the first things you think of, or what's the structure you think of?
Well, I would go for the 3-act structure. like if you were storytelling. So think in terms of a character who wants something, they overcome conflict to get that thing,
Yeah,
and then how they're transformed by the process.
yeah. I think that last bit is the bit that always does it for us.
Mm.
Even when you get, I mean, it happens in soap operas, doesn't it? You know,
Yes, yeah, good example.
all of the stories, even each episode, even if it's like 3 episodes to get to the culmination of what happens, you get something, you know, where we are now, something happens, and then where we are,
Yeah,
which may not be the end, but it'll
yeah.
then something else happens, and so on and so forth. So it is the old beginning, middle, and end.
Mm.
Uh, but you've got to, as you put it, understand it more, because the beginning's got to be a relatable character, hasn't it?
Yes, yep, that's right.
And and even if it's a bad guy, they've got to be relatable,
True.
because nobody is completely and utterly bad. They've all got some little point about them. At least I'm
Yes.
pretty convinced about that.
I,
Just
I
having a
was,
bit of worry.
yeah, no, I was just I was just watching Harry Potter last night, and I was trying to think Voldemort. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm not sure how much I like him, but yeah, I get what you mean.
And yet, yeah, I've watched it not recently. It's been a long, long time ago. But even with somebody like Voldemort, there is something there that is
Yes.
actually, you think, oh, you hurt a little bit when something happens to him, perhaps. That often works. Or you look at, he does something appalling and you think, wow, I was nearly on that slope once.
Mm, yeah.
And those sort of things do relate, because although we might not like to admit it, we all make mistakes. We
Yeah.
were saying earlier, they're really good things to do and to make. But when you see somebody else make one and you go, ooh, you actually do have a connection with that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. I think that transformation that you're talking about is really key, isn't it? So it
Isn't
can be that you start with,
it?
even if mistakes you made, perhaps if it's something that relates to your brand values and your mission, and this is what I did before, but then this happened and I realized, and that was the transformation, then that's redeemable, isn't it?
It
Yeah,
is.
and it relatable. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also very relatable, and it makes the audience feel good. And had a story with a client last week, just a little one. And she started this job, which was something she'd never done before. And it's quite a hands-on job. It's looking after a carding mill factory that cards wool. And so she was in charge of this huge carding machine. At least she was sort of second in charge of it. And she learned it, and she's actually quite fascinating because she loves, I mean, she was the sort of girl who used to play with Meccano sets and loved putting Meccano sets. So it's right down her street. And so it carried on. She was there, and she's been there about a year now. And in the summer, the boss, charge hand of this bit, he left. So the big boss said, all right, okay, you are now the temporary apprentice in partnership charge hand. In fact, you've got it now. And so she's like going, okay, as you do. And she's actually picked it up. And her pivot point was really that she thought, well, you know, I don't mind doing this under somebody else's supervision, but I can't really do it. I can't believe in myself. And as she said to me, you know, doing this, getting in there, fixing it, and looking after the other people who are working in there, I lost my imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
And I can see that because it's suddenly come home to her. You are doing this job, you know, and
Yeah.
stand there, stand tall, be that person. And the difference it's made to her life is huge. So that was a really big pivot point. Which is quite interesting because it was all
It's
mechanical
really
pivoting.
interesting.
It's a really big thing that she did. And it was by looking into the mistakes and things that she'd made before and looking into what had caused those and what had made her miserable in the past and feel that she was absolutely no use, that had actually said, yeah, I can. And she'd taken the job and got on with it.
Mm.
So I think root stories and root pivots are
It's
quite
very
good.
powerful, isn't it?
It is. Stories about how people have been, put down then, let's put it that way, because we've all
Yeah,
been.
we have.
And it's not nice. In fact, it's quite demoralizing, and you can feel really small and just want to go and crawl away. And it's because we've actually sort of taken it on, isn't it?
Yes, it is. There's a saying, isn't there? Or it said that you really remember the negative things people say to you far more than those positive things. And for some reason, it's sadly true, I think.
It is. And I think it's something that telling stories of people overcoming it in podcasts can actually help people with.
It definitely helps other people, doesn't it, to hear that someone has trod that road before.
Mm.
Yeah, you become the guide.
Yeah. I think we get to feel that I'm all alone on my path and everybody else is doing better than me. We all go through those at times. And it's really nice to say, no, you can actually do this.
Hmm.
You are doing this. Indeed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, no, we're not there yet. um, so, hang on, I'll just stop sharing, I think, for a minute.
Okay.
And I think it's this relatability and the pivoting points and the showing people what is possible. You were saying about the negative stuff. Um, I don't actually listen to the news.
No, me neither, actually.
I actually avoid it quite
Hmm.
deliberately. And surprise, surprise, I'm okay. I'm doing all right. I'm still alive, and my business is fine. And I still haven't listened to the news
Yeah,
because it's so depressing.
no, I
It's
fully agree.
full of bad stories about awful things happening and people being really hurt,
Hmm.
and there's almost sometimes a feeling of gloating of I'm not there, it's them,
Mm.
which I really don't like.
I don't think I've ever missed anything important because, well, I've got a dad and a husband who do follow the news. I think my husband even has the BBC alerts on, so he'll always, I know, total opposites. So like, he'll always keep me informed if I really need to know. But
Yeah,
otherwise, you will see it or hear about it. So yeah, it's about filtering, isn't it? What's good for you? What's good for your mental health, and what do you want to bring into your world? I think that's important.
I do, and I think if we can tell. I just nearly got into one of these frightful 1950s conversation things. If we can tell improving stories, well, let's not do that. Let's just tell real stories. I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree with that.
Yeah, and it makes
And
a
I,
difference. Go on, sorry.
sorry, no.
You
I was
first.
I
Sorry.
was only going to say that
Sorry.
I think the more you practice telling stories, the easier it becomes.
Yeah,
And depending on how your mind works, it's not necessarily going to apply to everyone. But you could start by writing it out. That can be a good way to think it through, and then think maybe where you even want to start bringing the audience into your story, because it doesn't necessarily need to be right at the beginning. It was a dark and stormy night. um, you can play around with where you drop the listener in, can't you? And yeah, just practice, I think.
yeah, yeah. And we often used to get told, I don't know that it happens so much now. Hopefully, it doesn't. Ellen, you're talking to yourself again. And yes, and I'm probably telling myself stories.
Mm.
And if you practice that and actually listen to yourself as you're telling the story, it can be quite good. And the other thing to
That's a
do,
good tip.
well, I find it so. The other thing to do is I turn, so I'm telling a story, so I'm cooking or something in the kitchen. And so I'll turn the recorder on my phone and have it down beside me. And I'm telling the story. So you get the story mixed in with, me beating eggs or something. But I'm telling the story and it's recorded. And I find that really helped me because
Ah,
when I was just telling the story and I wasn't like, oh, I've got to tell a story, I was cooking. But
okay.
the story was actually quite good. Didn't need a lot of sort of clunking and clinking taken out of it, but it does work. So how about that, people? Try that.
Mm.
You're all on your own. There's only you. And you want to tell this story, something's really got to you, or you're having really good fun in the garden, or something like that, or on a walk, talk it into your phone and
Yep,
listen to yourself.
that's a good way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I think it works. And it gets you over this feeling that I'm going to be really boring and my voice isn't going to be any good. And nearly everybody's voice is fine as long as you're not sitting there thinking, I'm telling a story, therefore I'm going to talk like this all the time and I'm not going to move anything in my voice and I'm hardly going to move my face either.
Yeah, that's it. Don't be afraid to use the range of your voice.
But you find when you're only talking, you do. Your voice
Yeah,
goes,
yeah,
everywhere. And it's fine. That's how it should be.
that's it.
When you are trying to perform, it's
Yes, that's when
really,
it can sound a bit forced or strange.
yeah. And so have practice in your phone. And if you really like it, um, you've got people, haven't you, Victoria, who can actually take that story off your phone and turn it into a listenable podcast.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So there are ways of doing this that, yeah, it's really nice to have, your super mic and your super camera and all. Well, you don't need your camera just for a podcast, but your super mic with you. But you get little tiny ones.
Yes, yeah.
Just tell the story wherever you are, out with the dog, whatever you're doing, and tell the story and use that as a podcast.
Yep, it's good advice.
People do because they've had my just what's yours?
A final tip.
Yes, a final tip.
A final tip. I would just say practice makes perfect. So don't be afraid to start, which is really what you're saying, and do it in the way that you're comfortable. So if that's writing it first, or if that's talking into your phone and recording it, just get started. And the more you practice it, you'll be able to form that shape and maybe apply the 3-act structure, and you'll get more confident about sharing it.
Yeah. And I'd also say if you want to do it on a podcast, go to Victoria for some help because you'll get lots.
Oh,
And you still doing your course?
well, we do have the course, yes, but we're not running it at the moment. But
No.
yes, I can give some information about it.
So that'll be there. And the other thing is, when I'm coaching, I help people to tell their story and get their origin story out. So between the two of us, we can juggle you into storytelling.
That's it. Ellen can help prepare you. We can help book you on the shows.
Yep, which is fantastic. I can totally guarantee that. And the number of friends you make when you do it, isn't it fun?
You're really good at that. You're really good. I think every podcast we booked you on, you had further ways to collaborate with the host and you were working together. So yeah, it's a great way to network, and you're particularly good at leveraging that. So yeah, I think if anyone's having coaching with you, you're very
Yeah,
knowledgeable about
I
that
can,
side of it.
I can certainly help you with that,
Yeah.
indeed. And it is about your origin story, and it's also about listening to other people's origin stories.
Mm.
Because you'll find that maybe you're being a guest on somebody's podcast, but you'll have a chat with them before, you'll have a chat with them after, and if you're listening to them rather than sort of going in and saying, well, Victoria, I want to talk about la 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 la, and Victoria's saying, really? Without actually doing that. And you're just cutting the listening off, whereas you just say, I was thinking about this. Do you think that would go down okay, Victoria?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's good.
it usually does. And the other thing you'll find is it's amazing the synchronicity. I had it only yesterday with somebody I was podcasting with. I said, well, what are we going to talk about this time? Because we do one about 3 or 4 times a year together. And she said, well, I've been really thinking about la 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 la. And so I was there, started grinning all over my face, because it was like, hey, guess what happened to me this morning and what I'm thinking about? And we were both there. And if you start off with that open, 10 to 1, you'll find that you're both really on the same thread.
Excellent.
So practice, practice, practice. Do it. Get out there. Say, will you be on my podcast? Can I be on your podcast? Victoria, show me how to be on a podcast. Get me booked up. Get me terrified, running away, and then I've got to do it. So, and practice telling stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, everybody. That's it for now, and we may well see you again.
May.
Don't forget, we've got those 5 tips from each of us coming. And
yes, yeah, absolutely. Let us know if you want a copy.
well, if you signed up, I'll find a way of getting it to you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Particularly like through DMs. I'll send you a DM and say, here it is. This is what you wanted. Signed up for this.
Fantastic.
You can contact us both on LinkedIn and on Facebook, can't you? And emails and everything are around on both, aren't they?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Helen.
Bye then.
All right.